They were both 27, just married. The kind of couple you'd see in commercials. Bright smiles, clean future, nothing out of place. Their names were Brian and Katie Thompson, a school teacher and a mechanic. No criminal history, no enemies, no debt. They had just left their small town in Oregon to take the road trip of their lives. 10 states in 14 days, all planned down to the last stop. The last known footage shows their car, Katie behind the wheel, Brian in the passenger seat, pulling off Route 93 somewhere in Nevada. That detour wasn't on their itinerary. They never checked in at the hotel. They didn't call home. There were no texts, no Instagram updates, no signs of trouble. Just silence. 3 days later, a park ranger noticed a car, way off the map trails, doors open, engine cold, sitting at the edge of a dry wash, miles from any marked road. Inside were their bags, untouched. Both their phones. Their wedding rings. And on the dashboard, a printed photo of the two of them from the wedding, edges curled from the heat. There were no footprints. No blood trail. No sign of a crash or struggle. Nothing. The car looked like it had been placed there. Authorities searched the area for weeks. Helicopters. Dogs. Volunteers. But then, something happened. Something only the recovery team saw that day. Something they won't talk about publicly. Something that made the lead investigator call off the search without warning. To this day, neither Brian nor Katie has ever been found. This isn't just a story about a couple that went missing. It's a story about what was left behind. About the last things heard on a broken tape. And about a place in the desert people don't go, at least not twice. What happened to the Thompsons? And what did the rescue team find in that car that made them stop looking? The wedding was held on a cloudy Saturday afternoon in Salem, Oregon. It wasn't a huge event, just close friends and family in a little wooden church with white paint peeling off the siding. Katie wore a second-hand lace dress she'd tailored herself. Brian rented his tux the day before. They didn't care much for appearances. They just wanted to be married. Their vows were quiet, personal. There were no fireworks, no stage. A friend recorded the whole thing on a borrowed camera. You can hear the wind rustling through the trees, and you can see Brian's hands shaking a little as he holds hers. People always say newlyweds look in love, but these two, they looked like they'd known each other in some other life. The kind of couple you just don't question. Katie was always the planner, organized, thoughtful, one of those people who made lists just for fun. Brian was quieter, more of a fixer. He could fix anything: cars, water heaters, broken fences. They'd been saving for this trip for over a year. No big resorts. No flights. Just a long drive through the desert. Away from everything. From Oregon through Utah, a few nights in Nevada, then Arizona. No real schedule, just checkpoints Katie had written out in a little brown notebook. Places to hike, old ghost towns, roadside attractions, things they wanted to remember. The plan was to end the trip at a cabin Katie found online, tucked away at the edge of a pine forest in northern Arizona. No neighbors, no Wi-Fi, a place to disconnect before starting married life. She called it their quiet finish. The first few days went exactly how they hoped. Photos show the two of them standing in front of a giant red canyon, eating pie at a roadside diner, holding hands outside a gas station just past Salt Lake. They'd send goofy little video clips back home, Brian joking about Katie's driving, Katie filming him while he tried to light a campfire. Everyone said they looked relaxed, happy, like the world had finally given them a break. Day 3, they stopped at an old mining town in Nevada. Katie loved history. She wrote about it in her journal, said it gave her the chills, in a good way. Day 4, no check-in, but nobody thought anything of it. They were in the desert and cell service was hit or miss. Day 5, still no contact. Brian's mom left a voicemail just to say hi. No answer. By day 6 it felt different. Not urgent, just off. Katie hadn't missed a day in her life when it came to texting her sister. Even on school trips, even when she was sick. She always said, "No one should have to wonder if you're alive." But this time, no text. No update. Not even a photo. They were supposed to arrive at the cabin on day 7. They had the key code. They had the address. A neighbor was supposed to greet them. But they never showed. On the 3rd night of the trip, Katie called her mom. It wasn't a long conversation. She was using the motel landline. The cell signal had dropped out hours earlier. She said they'd found a little place just outside Ely, Nevada. Quiet. Run by an older couple. The kind of place with quilted bedspreads and soda machines that barely worked. Katie told her mom they were doing okay. Said they saw wild horses on the side of the road that morning and stopped to take pictures. Brian had a slight sunburn. She laughed about it. Mentioned something about how dry the air felt. There wasn't any worry in her voice. No hint of what was coming. Brian was in the shower during the call. She said he'd be out in a second and they'd grab food from a taco stand they passed earlier. Then she hung up. That was the last time anyone heard her voice. They didn't check in the next morning. No text. No video. Nothing on social media. But no one panicked, at least not yet. It was just day 4. Maybe they were out of range. Maybe they were just resting. They'd said they wanted time off the grid after all. But by day 5 something felt off. Katie's sister sent a message, "Hey, just checking in. You good?" No response. Brian's dad called twice. Straight to voicemail. That's when Katie's brother logged into the private GPS tracking app she used. She'd set it up after an incident on a solo hike years ago. Just in case. The last clean ping was from the motel. But after that, the trail changed. Instead of moving southeast toward Arizona, their path veered sharply southwest, out of the way, off plan. They took turns onto smaller roads, then unpaved paths. By mid-morning, they were hours into country with no services. The GPS showed strange zigzags. Long stops in the middle of nowhere. They weren't headed to the cabin anymore. They weren't even headed toward any town. By mid-afternoon, they passed through a place called Garrison, Utah, barely more than a name on a sign. Then they crossed into Nevada again, going deeper into remote land. The names on the map started sounding old. Abandoned. Forgotten. They passed a place called Silver Vein. There were no photos. No listings. No gas stations. Just coordinates. A place that existed on maps but not in memory. At 6:42 p.m., their GPS pinged from a patch of desert near an old mine. Later, a park ranger confirmed he saw a white car parked just off the road at the same time. Said he was doing a drive-through that evening, checking the area before sunset. He spotted the car pulled up onto a small ridge. No movement. Windows fogged. Looked like it had been there for hours. He didn't stop. Just figured they were camping. He didn't know at the time that they hadn't been seen or heard from since the motel. After that night, the GPS trail went dark. No movement. No phone activity. No more pings. It was like the trail had been cut off. Authorities say the signal ended somewhere outside of Searchlight, Nevada, just beyond the edge of the Mojave. A place where the ground looks scorched and even the wind seems to forget where it's going. 3 days later, a rescue team found the car. It was sitting in silence, miles from anything. A single vehicle. Dust covering the windows. Doors cracked open. No sign of a crash. No sign of trouble. No sign of them. The search team wasn't even supposed to go that far out. The original plan was to scan nearby rest stops and fuel stations along the old highway. But one of the volunteers insisted they check the outer trails near the Mojave line, just to rule it out. There wasn't much logic to it, just a feeling. Late that afternoon, they split up and started scanning the edge of a dried-up riverbed. It was almost sundown when one of them spotted something white in the distance, barely visible from the road. It looked like a car half covered in dust, parked at the base of a shallow hill. When they got closer, they stopped. No movement, no noise, just a car sitting alone in the heat like it had been there for days. It was Brian's Subaru. No question about it. Same model, same plate, same worn sticker on the rear bumper that read, "Always take the scenic route." They circled the car slowly, unsure of what to expect. The first thing they noticed was that the front driver and passenger doors were wide open. Both rear doors were cracked halfway, like someone had planned to shut them, but never did. The keys were still hanging from the ignition. The engine was cold. There was no damage, no crash, no flat tire, nothing to suggest a breakdown. Everything inside the car was still there. Katie's phone was on the seat, the screen cracked. Brian's wallet was in the glove box, still holding cash and ID. Their overnight bags were stuffed in the back, zipped up. A few granola wrappers on the floor. A road atlas with pages dog-eared. Their wedding rings, both of them, sat side by side in the center console, like someone had placed them there deliberately. Nothing looked stolen. Nothing looked out of place. Except the fact that they were gone. And something else. In the back seat there was blood. Dry, smeared into the cloth. Not enough to suggest a major injury, but enough to know someone had been hurt. One of the deputies leaned in to look for signs of a struggle. There weren't any. No broken glass. No torn clothing. Just that smear, long, faint, and stopping near the window. Then came the part no one could explain. The sand around the car had clearly shifted. You could see trails in the dust, like someone had walked around the car over and over. But there were no shoe prints. No boot marks. No bare feet. Nothing defined. The ground was soft enough to catch even the smallest indent. But there were none. It was like someone, or something, had moved through without touching the earth at all. One of the volunteers said the air felt too still, like the desert had stopped breathing. Another described it as heavy, like standing in the middle of a parking lot after a thunderstorm. The heat didn't feel natural anymore. They started to call it in, but the radios cut out, just static. No signal. That's when one of the deputies found the camera. It had been shoved under the driver's seat, wedged between a floor mat and a forgotten energy bar wrapper. A small handheld camcorder, dusty but intact. The kind you'd use on a trip like this, easy to carry, good for short clips. They turned it on. It had one video saved. The screen lit up to a familiar scene. Katie was behind the camera, Brian sitting in the car beside her. She was teasing him about missing an exit. They were laughing, happy. You could hear the low hum of music coming from the stereo. Katie turned the camera toward the window to show an old mining road in the distance. She said something, almost too quiet to hear, about a person walking near the fence. Brian turned to look. Then the camera shook, like it had been dropped. The next few seconds were a mess of motion. The sound cut in and out. Flashes of desert. Then darkness. The next clip began with the camera pointing at the ground, recording their footsteps as they walked. But not on a road. More like gravel or loose rock. It was night. There was no talking. Just breathing. You could hear Katie whisper something, but the wind swallowed it. Then the frame shook again, fast. The last thing seen was a flash of light. Then static. And then, nothing. The screen froze. The battery died. That was the only footage on the device. No other clips. No backup. Just a handful of seconds that raised more questions than it answered. And no trace of them. No bodies. No signs they ever left the car. No direction to search. Just a vehicle, a blood smear, a dead camera, and a silence no one could break. The camera had only one video. It was just under 3 minutes long. No title. No label. The file name was a long string of numbers, likely automatic. The search team watched it once, right there at the site. Then again later in full screen. After that, they locked it up. The first 30 seconds looked almost normal. The frame was dark. You could hear the sound of footsteps, heavy, moving fast over gravel. The camera shook like it was being held at chest level. A flashlight beam danced across the frame, catching bushes, dry rocks, and open desert. You could hear breathing. 2 people, both out of breath. Then the voices started. Katie was ahead. You could hear her clearly. "Stop. Brian, stop. Just listen." Brian's voice followed. Lower. Calm but focused. "I didn't hear anything. Let's keep going. The car's that way." But then both of them stop walking. The footsteps slow. The flashlight stops moving. The camera tilts upward. There's silence. Not like the absence of sound, more like sound had been turned off. No wind, no bugs, no animals, just stillness. Then the humming starts. Quiet at first. Oh, it sounds far away, but there's no clear direction. It rises and falls like it's being carried through water. It isn't music. It isn't language. Just a sound. Familiar in shape, but not in meaning. You can tell it makes them uncomfortable. Katie whispers something under her breath. The mic doesn't catch it. Brian lifts the flashlight and pans to the right. That's when the shape comes into view. At first you think it's a tree stump. Maybe a shadow. Something ordinary. But then the light hits it directly. It's standing still behind 2 split trees. The outline is tall, too tall. The top of it nearly touches the lower branches. The beam bounces off what looks like skin, pale, smooth, with no color or detail. No eyes, no mouth, just the suggestion of a face. It doesn't move. It doesn't blink, but it's there. Brian gasps, sharp and sudden. The flashlight jerks. Katie says his name. Quiet, almost like a question. Then the camera turns again, this time toward the ground. It shakes violently, either dropped or grabbed. You hear someone running. Or maybe both of them. The mic starts to clip. The sound gets distorted like the device can't handle the noise. The humming comes back, louder now, sharper. But the sound doesn't grow because the source is closer. It grows because it's inside the camera. And then, static. The frame breaks. White lines cross the screen. The video glitches, skips a few seconds, and then freezes on a frame of the desert floor. One rock, a piece of cloth, and part of someone's shoe. Then black. Complete blackout. No fade. No outro. Just the end. That's the full video. Or at least the part anyone outside law enforcement has seen. When authorities reviewed the footage, they confirmed that it was real. Time-stamped to the same day the car was found. Same clothes. Same flashlight Brian was carrying when they left the motel. But something strange happened when they tried to extract the final seconds. The file corrupted itself. Not just glitched, corrupted. The audio track stretched unnaturally, playing a slowed version of that same humming, but with new tones underneath. A clicking sound. 3 pulses, then silence. A technician from the sheriff's office tried to repair it. His laptop crashed. Twice. The official report says the video was damaged in storage. That the device was too old or the desert heat had affected the files. They say there's nothing useful left on it. But people who were in the room during the first viewing say otherwise. One deputy left the room midway through. Another refused to watch it a second time. And one member of the search team, a man with over 20 years of experience, filed for medical leave the day after. His wife told a reporter that he doesn't talk about the video, won't even let it be mentioned in the house. As far as the public knows, the full video has never been released. The camera sits in an evidence locker somewhere in Clark County, sealed and logged. And whatever was on those final frames stays there, out of sight, off record, but not forgotten. When the case reached the press, it sounded like any other desert disappearance. A couple, a road trip, a wrong turn. But behind closed doors, those involved with the search were telling each other something else. None of it official, none of it written down. There were 3 theories, and none of them made people feel better. The first came from locals, not police, not media, people who've lived in that part of the country for decades. Ranchers, gas station owners, men and women who know the desert by name. They talked about places like Silver Vein, ghost towns left behind when the mining dried up. Most are quiet, empty, but Silver Vein is different. They say people pass by but don't stay. Even animals seem to avoid it. There are stories, always told in low voices. One man claimed his grandfather walked the town line one night in the 70s and came home with his hair turned white. He never said what happened, just stopped going outside after dark. Another said his cousin was out with friends near the area. They found an old well, and when they leaned over it, they heard music playing from below. Not radio music, but something older, a tune no one could name. Most people dismiss those stories, but they still tell them. And when the footage from Katie and Brian's camera was recovered, and when the sounds on that tape began to circulate behind closed doors, a few of the locals who had grown up around there, the ones who don't scare easy, asked to be removed from the search effort. They didn't say why. They just said they were done. Then came the second theory. It started with the mark found on Brian's car, barely visible, just under the window on the driver's side. A circle with 2 lines, one straight, one diagonal, cut into the paint. You wouldn't notice it unless you were looking closely. Not carved with a key or a knife, something sharper, cleaner. It didn't match any gang signs. No known symbols from cults or religious groups. It wasn't graffiti, at least not modern. But then an archivist from a nearby university stepped forward. She had seen something like it once before, in a collection of papers donated in the 1960s. Personal journals from a man named Elmer Tate, who'd lived near the Nevada border and kept records of what he called desert watchmen. According to his notes, these weren't people, not exactly. They were figures seen by travelers who'd stayed too long in the open, or strayed too far off marked paths. The same symbol was drawn next to each story, sometimes on caves, sometimes scratched into barn doors. One was even burned into a piece of driftwood found over 200 miles from the sea. No one ever proved the group existed, but the symbols match. And then there's the third theory, the one people hesitate to talk about. Just 8 miles from where Brian and Katie's car was found, there's land nobody enters. It's not marked on tourist maps. No signs. No roads. But if you follow old survey charts, you'll see a wide rectangle of land boxed out in red. Locals call it Echo Field. The fences are metal, not wood, topped with barbed wire. The cameras aren't for show. The area is lit from above by lights that don't always stay on. Sometimes they flash in patterns. Sometimes they hum. Locals have reported seeing what they describe as light storms. Sudden bursts in the sky. Bright colors. Then nothing. A man in the town of Searchlight claimed his brother disappeared while hunting near that stretch in 1998. When he turned up 3 days later, he didn't speak for a month. When he finally did, he told his family he hadn't been alone. But when they asked what he meant, he went quiet again. He died 5 years later. Never said another word about it. No agency has claimed responsibility for that land. No aircraft are registered to it. And no one will answer when locals ask about it directly. Then there's the voice. One of the rescuers, a man named Russell Fields, had worked over 40 missing persons cases in his life. He'd pulled people from flash floods, cliff sides, desert heat. But after the Thompson case, he left the team. He agreed to one interview, under a fake name. The reporter, who has since retired, kept a copy of the recording. The man's voice is altered, but you can still hear the weight in it. We found the car. We saw what was around it. But there was something else that night. I don't know what I saw. I won't go back out there. When asked to explain what he meant, he refused. He never worked a case again. 6 months later, almost to the day, another couple disappeared. Same age, same kind of trip. Left from a nearby town, headed south. They were last seen getting gas outside Mesquite. Their car was found a week later, off the same back road. Doors open. Personal belongings inside. No tracks. No bodies. And one other thing. On the passenger side door, drawn lightly into the dust by a fingertip, the same symbol. The same mark. Same pattern. Same end. After the last search was called off, no one really knew what to do. The agency stopped sending people. The media moved on. The story faded from headlines. But for the families, the real silence started then. Brian and Katie were declared missing persons, but never presumed dead. No bodies. No remains. No confirmation. Just gone. Katie's mom still calls her phone. She doesn't say anything when the voicemail picks up, just listens. Says hearing her daughter's voice, even recorded, is better than the quiet that follows. Brian's brother tried to retrace their route 2 months after the case went cold. He drove every road they had marked, every stop on their map, stayed in the same motel in Ely, walked through Silver Vein during the day, spent the night in his car with the doors locked and the engine running. He didn't see anything. But when he got home, he boxed up his backpack and wouldn't speak about the trip again. Katie's father goes to the site once a season. Spring, summer, fall, winter. Always alone. Always bringing something small, flowers, rocks, or notes. He leaves them at the edge of the trail where their car was found. No one goes with him anymore. He doesn't ask. On the 3rd visit, he found the memorial cross knocked over. It wasn't the wind. The base was buried deep. He set it back upright and pressed it further into the ground. The next time it was missing. He made a new one. This time he carved both their names into the wood. He hasn't told anyone where he keeps the extra crosses. But you can see the older ones half buried in the sand nearby. Faded. Tilting sideways. Still there. And then there are the sounds. At first, people thought it was just desert echo, the way noise travels differently in empty space. But it didn't stop, and too many different people started hearing the same thing. Hikers on night trails, campers parked off-grid, even off-duty rangers. They all said they heard it, a woman's voice calling out, not loud but close, like someone talking just over your shoulder, asking for help. Or maybe just calling a name. It never sounds panicked. Sounds tired. One group of campers said it moved with them. They heard it half a mile from their tent. Then again near the ridge. Always behind. Never ahead. One man, a Navy veteran with over a decade of survival training, says he heard it near midnight. He grabbed his flashlight and walked toward it for nearly 40 minutes. He followed what he thought was a human voice, but every time he got close it shifted. When he finally turned back, he realized the camp was gone. He'd walked in a full circle, 4 times. He said the desert felt different that night. Too still, like it was listening. There are also the lights, not from stars, not from planes. Small flashes, like reflections where there shouldn't be anything reflective, caught in the distance, hovering then gone. One woman claims she saw something watching from the hill where the car was found. She didn't get close. She just turned and walked back to her truck. Drove 3 hours straight. Didn't stop. Said she wouldn't return to that stretch of land for anything. She won't talk about what she saw, only that it wasn't alone. And in the months that followed, others came forward. One man said his camera stopped working just past mile marker 14, right near the old mining town. Another had 3 hours of footage erased from his GoPro. A third lost signal to every satellite device for a full day, even though the weather was clear. They tried reporting it. No one followed up. And still, the desert waits. Not every place moves on. Not every mystery fades. This part of Nevada doesn't forget what it's taken. Whether Brian and Katie were lost to something human or something else entirely may never be known. But the ground still remembers where they walked. The wind still sounds wrong at night. And every year more people stop their car at the wrong place at the wrong time and leave nothing behind but tracks that go one way. The desert doesn't give back what it takes. And sometimes, it doesn't even leave a trace. People still argue about what happened to Brian and Katie Thompson. Some say they just got lost, turned around in a part of the desert that doesn't forgive mistakes. Others think they were caught in something they didn't understand. Maybe something ancient or hidden. Whatever happened, they left behind a trail that doesn't follow any road. A car with no tracks. A sound no one can trace. And a question that hasn't gone away. Are they still out there? Or did something find them before help ever could? We may never know. But one thing is clear. This wasn't just a case of two people taking a wrong turn. There's something about that place. Something that makes people go missing without a sound. And sometimes, it doesn't stop at one. So what do you think? Did the Thompsons disappear by chance? Or did something wait for them in the desert? Something that still waits? Tell us what you believe. Drop your theory in the comments. And if you want more true horror stories like this one, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and don't go wandering off the map. Because some places, once you find them, you don't come back from.